What words of advice do you have for listeners in terms of following their dreams and passions and using their giftings to make the world a better place?
The one thing I always want to share, and I always tell, in my workshops and everyone is this idea of lifting as you climb. And so, if you're getting opportunities, if you're getting into places and rooms, who are you also lifting as you get there? Who are you empowering? Who are you being an advocate for?
Welcome to Champion This with Brianna, Salvatore, Dueck, and Chelsea Poppens, where we share the incredible stories of athletes and entertainers who are using their platforms to create positive change in the world and the communities they live in.
And today we have Olivia Ho from the Give and Grow, which is a women-led organization focused on growth with a vision to positively impact the next generation of young girls and women through sport, in-house wellness workshops, and female mentorship. She's an healthcare worker from Toronto, Canada. She recently turned entrepreneur in 2020 amidst the pandemic, and she's been involved in youth sport for the last 14 years. She currently has partnerships all over America with various NBA teams, Nike, Adidas, and Foot Locker, just to name a few. But welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks so much for having me, Chelsea, Bree. Excited to top it up today and chat about the Give and Grow, a little bit about my story and how it came to be.
Yeah. Well, we actually met in NBA All-Star Weekend for an event called Run It Back by Lexi Mickens.
Shout out, Lex.
Yeah. Get the plug. But it was so great to hear you. And I'm excited to hear more about your story after just getting to know you then. We usually start this off just by digging a little bit into your background and how you got involved in sport, how you found this passion, and how Give and Grow came to be. So take it away.
I'm Olivia from Toronto, Canada. And growing up, I played a lot of sport. I played basketball, volleyball, soccer, softball, track. I was a really active kid, and being like half Filipino, my mom's Filipino and my dad's Vietnamese. Basketball is really important to the Filipino community, and so every Saturday would go to the local community center, play on a local basketball team, and I think there was only like 4 or 5 girls teams at the time, but played a lot of basketball every weekend kind of growing up, and it kind of was engraved into our like family culture and who I was. And so I knew that, basketball always meant something to me specifically. And it allowed me to kind of, carve my own path in basketball that I never knew existed. And so played all throughout high school, got injured in my last year of high school, and didn't really have, I guess, like the resources and support to be able to go through physio and continue, playing. And I think also too, just even coming, as much as basketball is really important, coming from an immigrant family, it wasn't something that was pursued. And so as much as I loved the game, I was pretty good back in the day. After that injury, I kind of just, knew that basketball was important to me, but didn't think it was a realistic option. And so went to university. I studied kinesiology because I knew, again, sport therapy, athletic therapy was just the way I wanted to go. And in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm going to be an athletic therapist for the Raptors. Let me, go into kinesiology, go to physio school, and do all these things. And so throughout university, I was able to still work with youth in sport and continue to tap into that side. So even though I didn't play personally, I was able to coach through sports camps, after school programs, and really wanted to kind of ingrain that idea of learning life skills through sport and kind of empowering the next generation through all these, random jobs that I had throughout university and after that. So I knew that basketball was always important. I that was the way I thought that I could keep it close to me, was by kind of coaching young girls. And I ended up doing this post-grad program, really random, which was cardiac sonography, which is ultrasounds of the heart. And so I ended up working downtown Toronto, doing ultrasounds of the heart for about 7 years, like 7 years full time, between like a kids hospital and an adult hospital. And I was also coaching still at the exact same time. So downtown Toronto, there's a facility called MLSC Launchpad. It's actually owned by the same owners of like the Raptors, the Maple Leafs, and all of our professional sports teams. And so that was the affiliation kind of with the Raptors. And so I ran all of the girls sport programming every Monday night for girls ages.
Yeah. How
It
many
was
people
girls
were part of
ages
that?
like 6 to 18. Each of our programs, yeah, were like 6 to 10, 11 to 14, 14 to 18. There was anywhere from like 50 to 60 kids in each of the different programs. As it was the older age groups, it kind of like you can see the drop off. But I
Yeah,
did that
for
for
sure.
about like 5 years. Yeah. So
Really
I ended
cool.
up kind of working both between the hospital and at the sports facility, which was really convenient. It was like a 7 minute walk from like my hospital shift. I would be done
I
at
love
like
that. Yes.
4. I would start my shift at 4:30. I'd walk over to the sports facility, get a little like a physical activity in, work with the kids for a few hours, and then I'd be home by like 6:37. So it was a pretty good flow. I did that for about 5 years, and I thought that I could, I was working at the hospital using my degree and making a sustainable income, and then also fueling my passion through working with the kids in sport and continuing to like share my love for the game and basketball. And then COVID happened. So it was 2020. And so the gyms were closed. So obviously I couldn't be working at Launchpad anymore. Had to physically be at the hospital still, Monday to Friday. And
Hmm.
we all know kind of what that looks like. And so
Yeah,
we were kind
super
of,
intense.
yeah. So it was a moment where I was kind of like, is this what I want to be doing with my time? And so, amidst the pandemic, when everyone was baking banana bread and doing puzzles and doing all those things. Like I did all those things, but I also had some old basketballs in my closet. And a friend of mine had made these planters for a YouTube show that she was on. And so I was like, oh, I can make these. And so I cut up some basketballs. I was on my
That's cool.
rooftop.
Just so you know, on my side, I would never, I do not have the creative artistic brain to be like, um, I should make some planters. That's
Yeah,
really,
no, it
really
was
cool and so unique. I love that.
Yeah, and it was one of those funny things where like plants were getting really trendy though. Like everyone loved plants. And so it's that
Yeah.
perfect storm of like exactly, it's a perfect storm of like, hey, like everyone's in Zoom calls, their walls are pretty blank. How do we like spruce it up a little bit? And
Yep.
so after making these planters, I just posted on my own Instagram for kind of some family and friends. And a lot of people started reaching out to me being like, Olivia, like, can you make me one? And I all of a sudden had a list of like 20, 30 people who were like, okay, I got to get to work, after this weekend or whatever it looked like. And so, when starting the Give and Grow, I thought to myself, how do I incorporate the girls and the youth? Because, specifically the facility was closed. How do I continue to engage that specific kind of age group and
Hmm.
community that I had built throughout the last 5 years? And so when I was thinking about the Give and Grow, I was thinking about the girls that, I had coached for the last 5 years and that I knew through the sports facility. And so I thought, okay, maybe we could do a little workshop where they could customize their own little basketball planters with paints. And then, while we had them in the space, let's continue to have those conversations about, life skills we can learn through sports, things that we can learn through plants and the idea of personal growth. And so by doing that, I guess that's kind of how the name of the Give and Grow came. And obviously, if you're a basketball fan, the Give and Go, but its kind of true meaning is this idea of giving back to the community and helping to grow the next generation of girls and women. And so through this, I was all the money I was making from just like selling the basketball planters was just fueling these workshops that I would host for some like local girls in the community, and then ended up getting the attention of the Toronto Raptors. And so, working at the facility, I did have some ties with the team, but someone reached out to me and asked me to have or to make some custom planters for the team when they were out in Tampa Bay. So there was that COVID year where they weren't allowed to play in Toronto.
Hmm.
And so the team was out in Tampa and they thought, this could be a cool housewarming gift for the players, while they're in their hotels or Airbnbs or things
Oh,
like
yeah,
that. And
that's
so,
cool. I love that.
yeah. And so so we got a local calligrapher. We customized a bunch of basketball planters with their names. So at the time it
Amazing.
was Lowry, Siakam, Van Vliet. It was just after the championship year. And
Yeah.
so so they literally sent the team's planters like on their private jet out
Wow.
to Tampa
Love
Bay. And
Just
I was like,
this. Do you have a
casual.
picture of this? I would love to see all the planners just
yeah,
like
yeah, I have a
perfectly
couple.
positioned in that jet.
Yeah, I have right, exactly. I was like, oh, do you need me to come with you on the
Right?
jet? I'll take care of the plants. Like, I'll make
Yeah,
sure. Like,
come.
I'll be the
I will water
chaperone.
them mid-flight, whatever
Yeah,
you need
yeah,
me to do.
exactly. Yeah, and so they got a hold of kind of like me in that capacity where they ordered the planters, but then also wanted to do a little video segment on the stuff that I was doing at Launchpad as a coach, and also just like the community workshops. And so they filmed like a little video And I knew it was gonna like come out eventually. I didn't know exactly when. And I just remember being at the hospital, and then my phone, there was just like thousands of notifications on my phone. I'm like, well,
Wow.
here it is. Like, what here happened? So they posted it on their Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter at the time. And so they posted the little recap of, the stuff we were doing with the youth, the planters, the gifting of the planters to the team. And then, yeah, I think that was like the turning point. Everything from that day forward, like changed my whole trajectory of my entire life. So, yeah,
Wow.
it really was the Raptors. Like after they had posted this thing, I had thousands of like new followers. I had so many
Mm-hmm.
requests for planters. Like people were trying to order stuff off my website. My website was crashing. Like it was one of those moments where I was like, "Is this real? Like,
That's when you
what's
know
going
it's
on?"
real. Your website's crashing. It can't hold
Yeah,
all of
exactly.
the
Yeah, exactly.
demand.
So cool.
Exactly. And so at that moment, I was kind of like, I was at the hospital, and there was a funny time in the hospital where I don't know if you remember this, where there were so many videos coming out being like, we're having fun at the hospital, and it feels like a
Yes.
very like forced thing. So at the hospital that exact day, I remember, my boss being like, "Hey, do you want to be in this video? We're gonna do a karaoke thing with our ultrasound machines." And I was like, "No, like I'm good." Like, and then
Thanks, but no
that
thanks.
thanks, I'm good. And that day was when the Raptors video dropped, and it was the same video that they had asked me to record this video for. For, and I was like, "No, like we're good." And then the Raptors video dropped, and they're like, "Okay,
That's
yeah,
great.
we can't afford you," like, like.
I love
But
it.
it was a funny moment where I was just like, "Okay, like this could actually be, it's like the contrast of the two lives." And so I tried to
Yeah.
juggle both for a while. I worked at the
Yeah.
hospital for another like 6 months. And then I finally was like getting so busy and getting so many cool gigs that I was like, I need to quit. And it just happened
Mm,
so dramatically one day. I just went into work
mm-mm.
and I was like, I think I'm going to quit today. And then my boss was like, "What? Like, where did this come from?" I was like, "No, this has been brewing, but it
Yeah.
was just a matter of like, how do I now make space for what's to come? And I need to be available. I need to like kind of bet on
100.
myself too. And like,
Yes.
yeah, Chelsea asked earlier, like, "Oh, do you still have your license to be able to like to work in the hospital?" And I was like, "Nope, got rid of it." I was like, let me just
Yeah.
let
A
me just do
clean
a
break.
clean cut, yeah, clean break, because
Totally.
of course I could go back and always have that as kind of my safety net. But
Mm.
I thought, if I'm going to bet on myself and I'm going to go forward, I'm just going to go all in. And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
You know
kind
what I
of, it's
love?
been,
I love about your story, Olivia, so many things, but like you have put in so much work to get to the place that you are today. Yeah, there was this one moment where like things went viral and it was wild and like, your follower count just skyrocketed and your product is sold out. But your entire story, what I'm hearing is like you've been about this since the beginning. It's been in the essence of your DNA. You've like truly are authentic in the way that you're giving back to the community and in the work that you're putting in. And so this is fruit of that, right? And I'm just like so excited to continue to see it grow. But yeah, it also is just really encouraging to understand that there's like a process to success and driving that impact as well. Our whole podcast is around bringing on athletes and people across entertainment industry who are doing the good work, and to see you really um, doing that, but that it didn't just happen overnight, I think is great and definitely inspires me and encourages me. I love that.
yeah. And I think it's just a matter of like alignment. Like, like I've knew that basketball was always important to me. I wanted to keep it at the center of what I did. I just didn't know what that was. And like, the pandemic, it took something as unfortunate as a pandemic to kind of really steer and also make me think like, how do I want to spend my life? At any moment, our lives could be completely altered by this one thing. Am I happy? Am I in a position where, I could be proud of what I'm doing with my life? And, the hospital was great. I loved helping people in a different way. But I think now with this platform and being able to create community through the Give and Grow, like I could help people in a very different way that is more meaningful, I think, to me personally than, you know, and very grateful to be able to do that. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Bria. It gave me chills, like thinking about
Mm,
that. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, like I've been in
yeah.
this, you know?
Let's go. Imagine
Yeah.
like 10-year-old
Yeah.
Olivia looking at you today. She'd be so proud. So
Yeah,
cool.
no, it's been a fun journey.
From the beginning to now, the way you say it sounds like it just absolutely flows. You're like, I went from one thing to the next and then advanced to here and here and here. But was there ever a moment, especially in the pandemic where everybody's lives are turned over, was there ever a moment you're like, what am I doing? Am I called and qualified for this? Was there any like doubt that you had to work through or any question marks in the back of your mind?
I think the funniest thing is that like I never went into this thinking that like I'm going to start a business and I'm going to sell these things. It was kind of just like I'm going to continue to do what I've always done, which is host these workshops, like chop it up with local community youth and wherever that brought me. Being intentional about connecting with people that are already doing those things, and so allowing them to also like have a platform within my platform, and so not always trying to like make it about the give and grow and me. And personally, every time I go into a different space, I want to try and find people that are curating these events or these workshops or community initiatives. And so I think the coolest thing is that like the more I meet people like that, it's just again like a reminder that I am just kind of aligned where I'm supposed to be. And so, yeah, I
Mhm.
think to answer your question, when you say like, is there a moment? It's almost like, is there like an imposter syndrome moment or something like that? There have been specific moments where I'm in specific rooms and working with specific people and teams and things like that. But I think for me, at the end of the day, like we're all human, and I think that like if we can connect on a human level, regardless of who you are, who you work for, or what your credentials are, if we can vibe as on a personal level, like I never feel like I'm not supposed to be where
Yeah,
I am, if that makes sense.
Anything's
love it.
possible. I remember seeing one of your stories about how you had manifested a workshop. Well, we'll talk about your trip that you just got off of, but you had manifested this workshop that you wanted to have. Was it in LinkedIn or what? Where was it?
Shopify.
Shopify, and you actually did it this past year. And it sounds like you've
Yeah.
just been actively manifesting all of this and speaking it into existence. And I love that. That's really special. And not everybody can do that.
Yeah, I think for me, like it's been a funny process in a way where like, be careful what you wish for. You ask for these things. And yeah, I remember at the beginning of the year being like, I want to start working with more like West Coast teams. I want to be able to travel. I want to do all these things. And it all happened
Hmm.
like all at once. And it was like, all right, now you got to get on
Right.
17 flights. You got to go from here to here. It's
Oh
like, well,
my
you asked,
gosh. Yeah. Well,
It's like
since Olivia, I mean, like, since we met you at All Star Weekend at the Run It Back event with Lexi, you've been on the road, and that was in February, and we're in the end of April right now. Like, you literally
yeah.
just got back from those 17 flights. Wild. But tell us a little bit about that road trip. And, like, I feel like that also speaks to how Give and Grow has evolved. So, how have you seen it evolve today? And yeah, talk to us about being on the road for 17 straight locations.
Yeah, and so I actually, in the beginning of the year, I told myself, okay, I'm gonna move to Mexico City for a few months from like January to June. Um, I had some opportunities here to help build out some basketball programming with NBA Mexico and some local kind of change makers within the Mexico City kind of basketball environment. And so, I came here initially as a way to be like, okay, how can I start to grow the game of basketball in a place where it's not that prominent, instead of kind of going from Canada to the US where it already exists. We're amidst that kind of big push for women in sport. In Mexico it's not that prominent, and so met a couple people along the way that were able to convince me to go to Mexico for a little bit. And I was like, twist my arm, like let me leave the Toronto winter for a little bit. And so that was the initial plan. And then it was like the moment I got here is when all the opportunities came, which was really interesting because it was like almost like the moment where I was able to let go of maybe my apartment in Toronto, let go of the idea of being in Toronto. It almost like was making space for like what was to come. And so the moment I got to Mexico City, all these opportunities started flooding in, and it was like, okay, the Sacramento Kings want me to go to Sacramento to do a workshop with some of their youth for some programming that they had going on. And then it was like, all right, the Golden State Warriors wanted to do something, the Brooklyn Nets wanted to do something, Portland Trailblazers. And it was funny because at the time none of the events had happened yet. So they didn't even see that the other teams were doing those things. It just happened to, I don't even know how. I think it was through LinkedIn and just stumbling upon my profile and things like that, that people started to reach out. And so when I was in Mexico, I was like, okay, how do I plan this so that I could just like be on the road and not have to kind of go back and forth, have to go back to Toronto, whatever that looks like. So
Yeah.
I ended up kind of curating this like 6 week long like Give and Grow world tour, I guess you can call it.
And it
Where
sounds
I
so
was
good at the time. You're like, I'll just be so efficient with my time.
exactly, yeah, exactly. I'll be like, oh, I don't have to go back anywhere. I can go from plane to here to hotel, and so I was able to really like create a cool set schedule, even around like All Star Weekend, and make a stop at All Star and do some stuff out there, and curate this kind of whole world tour where I was kind of going a little bit east to west coast, but I was making it work. And at the time, obviously, again, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I didn't want to say no to any of the opportunities. I was like, you know what, like they're coming to me, they're presenting themselves. Let me see how I can make it work. And I'm also the type of person that like a lot of people are like, I don't know how you have all this energy. Like I just, I have like an unlimited amount of
One
energy.
of those. You're like first in the suicides and all the sprints in basketball. I'm sure of it. I can already tell.
I'm just like such a fucking key nerd or whatever.
She wakes up at 6 a.m. in the morning just ready to go.
Yeah. And so and when people ask me that, like, aren't you tired? Aren't you? Of course I'm tired. Of course, all those things. But I think what people don't realize is like when you're immersing yourself in your work and your thing, and every time I have a workshop or an event or whatever I'm doing, I'm getting like recharged above my capacity, where I'm like, I'm gaining so much from the people that I'm meeting, the women, the girls, the youth groups. And every time I'm at an event, as much as I'm like being depleted, I'm also being like recharged in a way that is like, this is my baby. This is my impact. This is what I have to share. And then being able to share that with other people, and then hearing the ways that maybe my story resonates with them or how it inspires them, like that is actually what gives me the fuel to be like, all right, going on a flight, heading over to New York and going back and forth, and so and then so that's I guess that's kind of where that that burst of energy comes from. It just comes from that natural passion of being able to like literally chase my dreams and do what I'm meant to be doing. And I could get tired from working 9 to 5 at the hospital too, but it's like, it's a different kind of tired when you're building for yourself and your brand.
For sure. And it's wild. I think just like how we're made as humans, when we give, that you also receive, like, and that sounds
the more you give, the more
but,
you grow.
Right. Oh, there you go. Okay. So we love that. But it really is like, it's such a crazy, cool thing in terms of just how that works. And so, yeah, I love that.
But also the
more you give, the more you grow.
Yeah. But also your story is such a key story to anybody that's looking to go after their dreams or the things they feel called to do. Like you just took a leap without really knowing where you would land, and kind of cutting off that former season of your life, that chapter, everything, all the comforts and everything that you knew in order to do what you're doing now. And it just felt right. And it's very cool to hear your story and how you just did it, and you did it scared, you did it uncomfortable, you did it in all of that. And you just flourished as soon as you got there. I think that's a really crazy, wild, amazing story for anybody out there that's listening to this and wants to take a leap towards what they want to do and what they feel called to do.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think that's actually what's been resonating with a lot of people, being like, okay, like Olivia could do it. She was just, a regular person who was just,
she's just a healthcare worker.
Just exactly. Yeah. And I think the one thing that actually resonates with people is that like, that I did kind of stumble into this, or it's like, because I knew that this was always like basketball and it was always a big part of me. And, as the moment I had the kind of like opportunity to follow that path, I just took it. And I think that's just a good reminder for people too. Like the more you just continue to dive in and do the things that you love, spend time with the people you want to spend time with, and really just like match that energy level of, what you want to be around and who you want to become, like naturally these things will fall into your lap, or the opportunities will present themselves, because all of a sudden you're at a point where, you've done the work. Like Bree said earlier, like this wasn't an accident. Like I've been, spending half of my life working with the marginalized youth and girls and sport. And it just happened to be just like that perfect kind of timing, that perfect storm to be like,
Yeah.
this is now your opportunity to use everything that you've been doing in the last 10, 15 years and apply it in a way where, this could be your life. And I think that that
Yeah.
story on its own has really resonated with people. And it's really like, I get messages once in a while being like, like I just wanted to say, like, you encouraged me to like quit my job, and now I'm like
Wow.
diving into my side hustle, and I'm like, that's not my
Yes.
message. Please don't quit your job and like blame me. I'm just kidding.
But we love that.
Everyone,
Yeah.
Disclaimer. but in a way where it's like I think in my circle there's been like two or three like even like close friends that have just like were like, you know what, I'm quitting, and just because like because they see my journey, they see the possibilities, and I think really all it takes is just like someone who like you resonate with doing the thing that
Mm-hmm.
you're like, okay, maybe I could do that too. Because I think sometimes when we
100.
hear stories or we hear conversations, we hear them from like the people at the top, we hear from the
Yeah.
CEO of this or whatever, and it feels
Steve
very
Jobs,
unattainable.
all of those.
It's like great, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like how am I relating to this like 50-year-old like white man who
Yeah.
did not have my journey, right? And so, which
Totally.
is why I try to make it really intentional that like when I speak to groups and when I speak to like community groups or whoever it is, like I really want it to be girls and women because I want them to look at me and say, I had this journey, that could be me.
Yeah.
And also just be kind of that representation that like I didn't have growing up as well.
Yeah, totally. I would love to hear too, Olivia, even just speaking about some of the people that you get to work with, the women and the girls. Like, what has been some of the impact that you've seen through these workshops? You touched a little bit on a couple of stories here and there, but would love to, if there are any like individual stories that come to mind of that impact, or yeah, really just take it as you wish with that question.
So I think the cool thing about the workshops that I do is that I'll cater to like sometimes I'll do workshops for like 6 to 8 year olds, and then I'll do them for like 15 to 17 years old, and then I'll have like even like my peers in our 30s, and so I think the really cool thing about specifically girls and women is that no matter what age we're at, we're all able to kind of have these conversations and really resonate with each other's like point of view and journeys. And so, every age group that I work with, I think like more than anything, like I learn so much from them as much as maybe I'm teaching them. And so learning their perspective, learning, how they operate in a new world as, Gen Zs or Gen Alpha or whatever that looks like. And so I always try to make an intention to, if I can, like curate environments where they're like intergenerational groups of women in one space. And so, you have people that are established in these big brands or whatever, but then you have the teenagers, you have, the mentors who might be in their 20s or mentees. And so it almost becomes an environment where like everyone is interacting. No one really knows how old anyone is. But amidst the conversation, amidst the activities and amidst all of that, like, we do realize that it's like we have so much to offer each other, regardless of what our age is. And it doesn't always have to be this like teacher student role. It could just be this like intergenerational learning. And so I think a really good example of that specifically is that there was this young girl named Salem who is about like was 12 years old when I first met her at Launchpad, and was able to coach her throughout the years. I knew her, for the last like 5, 6 years, and she's now like 17, 18. Has always been like kind of like really keen on learning from me and learning about the Give and Grow, and just really like wanting to be a leader. And so saw her from being like a youth participant at our facility to then like working at the facility, running programming herself. And then in addition to that, getting her to come and help me with the Give and Grow stuff. So when I have pop-ups, when I have different events and I need an extra hand, I'll tell her like, come, like I'll pay you for this event, like come. And I think it's really cool to be able to see her, like, I guess her progress in the last 5, 6 years, where it's just like, as I'm growing, so is she. And there's a few other girls that are still kind of in my atmosphere still. But I try to be intentional about like, okay, if I do want to hire someone, maybe I will give her the opportunity. Maybe I'll give her opportunity to lead. And so I think it's really about just, again, figuratively and literally the idea of growth and how we can help each other grow in different ways. Like maybe we don't realize it right away, but if you're in a position to kind of yeah, give someone some advice that'll help them along the way. Why not do that?
Mm. I love those full circle moments where the people I train young girls too, but now they're 18 and time has flied. And I
Right?
was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember when you were in sixth grade just sassing me. But
Right?
those full circle moments are so key. And I think that leads us into our next question is what role do you think giving back to these young women, young girls, and I mean, not just young women, but helping to establish women in leadership positions in the sports industry, in corporate, in wherever career they want to land in the future. How do you think that we need to do that? How important is that to you?
Yeah, so I think I think automatically everyone thinks like, okay, how do we get women in these like leadership positions? We need them in positions of power. It's like we need them in the door first. I think we're barely scratching the surface of being able to have a woman's perspective in a room. And so, as much as of course it'd be great to have a leader that is a woman in power, sometimes people at the top actually don't see what's going on at the bottom. And so sometimes, you could have these roles and they could be pretty performative. They could be very, let's check off a quota to have a woman of color in this role. But when it comes down to actual voices and perspectives, like you actually need more people in the room of like, let's say it's like your general staff of people to be able to give that perspective along the way as things are changing. And I think, yeah, as much as it's important to have someone at the top helping to make decisions, you really need the people at the bottom that are advocating for, their own specific communities and their own specific, religions, whatever it is. And I think that the more diverse you have a room of people, I always encourage this with the youth I work at Launchpad, because they are a lot of like marginalized communities that come into Launchpad, and they look very different. And I always ask them, I'm like, okay, when you walk into a room of people that don't look like you, what is your immediate response? And it's, a lot of the response is, oh, we stay quiet. We stay quiet because no one looks like us. No one can relate to us. And I always try to flip the script and say, you know what, like that is actually your biggest superpower. The biggest superpower you have walking into a room of people that don't look like you is that you are the only person that could give your perspective based on, your race, your religion, your gender, or whatever it is. And you're actually doing the room and the world or your job or whatever a disservice by not saying what's on your mind or not saying your perspective or whatever. Then eventually, that's how you get like certain campaigns or ad campaigns or social media campaigns that come out and you're like, was there not a woman in this room, or was there not
Yeah.
whatever? Because the answer is probably no. Like, of course you
Yes.
can't say that, because if there was a woman in the room, they would have flagged that. Or,
Yeah.
does that woman actually
100%.
have a voice, right? Like maybe they did say something, but then it didn't translate. So again, it's more about like, how do we get more women into all rooms, or more women to be the decision makers at all levels of sport? And I think we're kind of just at that beginning phase, and we're going to start to see a lot more of it, but we're just scratching the surface. So I think the first thing is just getting in the door.
I love what you shared. We had we had Chelsea Hill on the podcast last week. Chelsea Hill's incredible. She is a wheelchair professional dancer, an influencer. She has her own organization working with women and girls as well through dance. And she said something that really landed and resonated with me as well. I think that builds on what you were saying. She said, no one can do something the way that you can do something. So shine your light, show up with your full
Exactly.
potential, right? Like, yeah, maybe someone else has started a dance crew in the past, or, they've been a marketing manager at a company, but they've never done it like you would
In
do it
your way.
in your
Exactly.
way. So like, and we need those different voices, those different perspectives, and we need people to show up confidently and like fully them in those rooms. So I love what you shared and the work that you're doing to build on that.
And those are the questions that you ask young girls in your workshops.
Yeah, so a lot of our workshops are centered around just two topics. One is like lessons we can learn from the game of basketball. And so in these booklets, there's a lot of metaphors about, I'm trying to think of like the very first page. So they're called our playbooks. And the very first page says like, you are the playmaker. You have the ability to write your own game plan. And so really just from the jump, bridging in from my story and how I was able to kind of change my future, my game plan, I guess, like that. Just understanding that we have the power to steer our lives in different ways, and using sport as that kind of metaphor for this change. And so every page has this different conversation prompt about some a lesson that we can learn from basketball that we can apply to our everyday lives. And so it might say something like, rack up the assists. Like, if you don't give, you don't grow. And so it's this idea of community building. Who are the people around you? Who are you empowering? Who are you helping? Who's helping you? And so it's really about just kind of this idea of, racking up the assists, but also not forgetting yourself. And so being able to shoot your own shot, and making room for yourself and your own goals and things like that. So a lot of our conversations are kind of steered around the idea of basketball. And then we have these other booklets that are called like our bloom booklets that are about plants. So plants and how we can learn lessons from plants, staying true to your roots, watering things that grow, like only watering things that grow, or stop water. What's the thing? It's like stop watering dead plants or something, where it's kind of like, certain relationships or things in your life that you're putting a lot of effort into, when there's no reciprocative or like energy, or you're not being kind of watered in the same way, learning to let go of those certain things. So depending on the age group and depending on like the size of the group, we'll kind of curate these conversations based on, what the theme or the topic is of the workshop event. And so in addition to that conversation piece, that then we bridge into the more creative basketball planter. They get to customize their own thing and plant their own plant. And so it's kind of this whole creative, but also a lot of conversations and engaging the people that are in the room, and having some of the tough conversations with each other, and trying to be a little bit more vulnerable.
Are each of the workshops that you do across North America and with the NBA organizations, are they all the same type of questions, or are they same programming, or do they kind of fluctuate based on the need and the topic and the people bringing you in for that workshop?
Yeah, so I think we just start off by like understanding like what the reason why someone wanted to bring us into a group. So for example, when we did our event with the Golden State Warriors, they had this large event called Bay Area Unite, where they got all the women who worked for professional sports teams in the Bay Area to come into this event. And so there was like over 100 women who worked in sport, whether it was like the Oakland A's or the Kings or the Warriors or whoever it was. They came into the space and did some like on-court stuff, and then they transitioned into our workshop. So for that specific group, like knowing that, all the women are women who are the change makers that work in sport, and, maybe steering a little bit of the conversation more about, how they can continue to make space and impact and within their own organizations and their own roles. And at the same time too, talking about, those things that we can learn from basketball and learn from sport. And so you'll have that end. And then, one of the other workshops we did was with the Brooklyn Nets, with this group called Yes We Create, and they were a group of young girls ages like 7 to maybe like 14, 15. And that one, as much as we can curate conversation, a lot of that one was just centered around, having fun, being creative, sharing my story, whether it resonates with them or not, still letting them, learn and see the different options that they have in sport. If they love playing basketball, if they love playing sport, what are some other options besides becoming a professional player, And so tapping into kind of those professional sides too, and really just focusing, I think mainly for the younger groups, on like the creativity and having fun. And so, it really just depends on who the group is, what their overall goal is, what the overarching theme of the event. But I think with me, like being able to, I've worked at sports camps, my entire life. I've been able to curate a lot of these like events kind of on the fly. There'll be a group of like 50 walking into the space, and it'll be, okay, like organize something, do something. You have half an hour to figure it out. And so have been in a lot of those like really tight situations where I could create programming in like 5 seconds. Literally, I'll be like,
Wild.
Okay, this age group, this whatever, I'll pull it all together. I'll tie in a lot of my camp background, and we'll do some games, we'll do some icebreakers depending on the age group. And and like you said, I think like, it's because I've done all these things, and I have, maybe the resume to say, I've done X amount of things, and I've been able to kind of pull from that library of just like all the past
Yeah.
events that I've done. And so, yeah, with the Give and Grow, I think in the last like 2.5, almost 3 years, yeah, I've been able to host like 82 workshops,
Wow.
Wow.
1,600 participants in like 11 different cities across North America. So, um,
Just a
yeah,
few
it's been
things.
it's been it's been fun. Yeah.
We love that. So, Olivia, talk to me about a little bit of, some of the hurdles that you've encountered, because we've heard, your story, but would love to. I think it's a point of encouragement as well for people that it's not always just this perfectly smooth road to get to following your dreams. But yeah, what have been some of those hurdles and how have you overcome them? And maybe some of the things you've learned in the process.
Yeah, I think for the most part, everyone sees the highlight reel. They see all the glamorous things. They see, all the amazing things and opportunities I've been able to get. And they don't really see, what goes on behind the scenes. And I actually made a post about this recently. I think in the last 3 months, there was a moment where like things just weren't happening in the way that I wanted them to. And it was just kind of one thing after another. And obviously being on the road, being able to trying to manage that, with a team that's in Toronto and just being all over the place. It was, there's a few things that happened that I was just like, you know what, like, entrepreneurs, like we catch a lot of L's in silence. Like as much as you
Mhm.
see all the wins, you see all of the highlights, like there's a lot of L's behind the scenes that like every day we're kind of just having to figure out on our own. And because I never really had a business background, I don't know much about owning a business, selling a product, and things like that, which is yeah, now what I'm trying to kind of learn now, I would say, I think some of the struggles is just that um, the moment that you have to ask for help. I think the moment you ask for help becomes a very vulnerable moment, whether that's from, family, friends, whether it's from an investor or whoever it is you need. But I think, I'm learning right now, it's like in order to, it's funny because like I pretty much still like work as a one woman team. I have, a couple contracted roles here and there, but I think the irony is that like, I'm preaching community and helping each other and all these workshops, whatever, but like I'm not asking for the help that I need. And then maybe I'm not willing to accept, maybe the help that's accessible to me. And I think that just comes from a really place of a couple things, like um it could be imposter syndrome too, like maybe I don't think I'm ready to take that next step, or, maybe I could continue to do this and be okay. But in order for, my business and myself and my own personal kind of brand, like to be able to scale and grow, I need to be able to be open to letting people in and asking for help and looking for investments, looking for capital, and being okay with, accepting that from other people before thinking I can just do it all on my own. And I think I'm learning that right now. And I'm taking this time kind of after all my travels to really kind of hone in on what it is I need, being intentional about asking for what I need. And
Mm.
yeah, the response has been great. I've been able to um, get some help that I need and
Yep.
create some some new opportunities for myself. And so I think it's just a matter of, yeah, like understanding that it's not all going to be glamorous. And I think there's this false narrative that it's like turn your hobby, turn your passion into your full-time thing. And it's like a really big kind of narrative that's happening right now. But I think at the end of the day, um, just do what you enjoy doing. And if that happens to monetize, if that happens to be your life, like it's not always accessible to people, right? Like
Hmm.
to aimlessly or blindly say, follow your passion and do your thing, but you haven't done the work, or you've never been in these spaces. You've never, it almost is just like I'm setting people up for failure. And so the one thing that I do try to say is that like, if you have a hobby and you enjoy doing it, like some hobbies could just be hobbies. Like you don't need to monetize, you don't need to
Yeah.
show people, you don't need to take photos of it. Like you can just genuinely do things that make you happy. And that could be at the same um I guess like cost of like working a job that you don't like. Okay, maybe I don't work my job, or I don't love my job during the day. It pays my bills, it gives me a good insurance, it's checking the boxes. But at the end of the day, I could go home and, do some pottery, and that fulfills me in a different way. Even though I'm not selling the pottery, you're creating this balance of like doing the things you love with maybe some of the things you don't absolutely love. And so I think, yeah, I don't want to glamorize entrepreneurship at all. I get to do really cool things, and I get to be in really cool places and meet people. But at the same time, it comes with a lot of hard work,
Yeah.
dedication. You need to be willing to be the person to, sweep up all the soil at the end of the night. You need to be the person that's going
Hmm.
to take out the garbage. You got to be the person that is also going to be talking to, the CEO of NBA Mexico. Like, you need to be able to do all of those things if you really want to, I think, be an entrepreneur and really follow your passion. And if you're not willing to do all those things, I would say, like, yeah, don't
Maybe
do
don't
it.
make it your business.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right. And I think, again, like, as much as, like, I can maybe inspire people to do that. I have and still have a really big safety net of, I could always go back to the hospital.
Hmm.
I do have a family. I do have support, and that's not the reality for a lot of people. So it's not as easy to bet on yourself. And I'm very grateful that I'm in a very, like, luxurious position where, I do have the resources to be able to chase my dreams, but also have the same resources to be able to fall back and go back to my old life or whatever that looks like.
Mm.
But yeah,
I'm an advocate of strategic leave or strategic risk taking.
exactly.
But also I understand I'm kind of an entrepreneur. I have my full-time job with an agency, and it's like my baseline where it's like I love it. I love what I do. It's there, but it gives me access to do all like you said, do all those other things that fill these other buckets of me, sports and the creativity and all
Exactly.
these other. And so what you said is like not everybody needs to take the leap and jump to the next thing that they're creative about, because some people might end up hating that. They might end up hating the thing that brought so much life and fun,
Exactly.
and it was never meant to be a money maker for them. It was meant to bring joy to them or the people around them.
Exactly.
So going back to your travels to Mexico and how you ended up there, and you said you got there and all these incredible partnerships kind of just flourished and everything just felt aligned and like it was bringing you life and you're called and meant to go into this. And so you've had some incredible sponsors like Google Pixel and Foot Locker, along with some others. But how important is it to find partnerships and sponsorships that align with your core beliefs, your values, and the things that you're trying to do in communities? And how are you able to find more brands that are keen to partner with you in that way?
Yeah. And so I think this has been like a learning process, throughout the last couple of years. I've had to make the hard decision to say no to some brands that I maybe felt were either performative or maybe too corporate. And so I try to make sure that, I work with sponsors or have partners that check a few boxes and are really aligned with, like, our values. So one of them being, empowering women of some capacity. The next one is racial or underprivileged groups or racialized communities. And the next one would be just the idea of, like, as much as I could do maybe like a corporate workshop with some staff or whatever that looks like, I really want to be able to tap into, like, a local community group that they could provide for as well. So, yes, maybe, I do this corporate workshop with like 50 of your staff members, but after this, I also want to make the commitment to host a smaller workshop of 15 or 20 local youth where you could provide the resources and the money and the access to maybe their different spaces, and really try to hold brands, like, accountable in that way. So I think it's kind of twofold. Sometimes partners and brands will reach out to me to host workshops for their communities. Sometimes it's like, we want to sponsor one that you're already doing with, a community of your own. Or it's up to me to kind of find a local youth group that I could be that bridge between them. And so there's a couple different ways that I work with different brands. And I think the cool thing is, when I first started out, um, in Toronto, and Toronto's a really small community. There's a small basketball community, but it's a really, like, what's the word? It's like a really empowering community. And so anytime, someone is doing something, especially as a woman, especially as a woman in sport, there was this period around COVID, like 2020, even up until now, where, if anyone had any resources, if anyone had any plugs or whatever it was, we were sharing them with each other, because we were all in a moment of, like, we want to curate these things. We may not have a seat at this table, but we're going to create our own table. And so there was this really cool moment of like community building while building my business. And that's actually what gave me the leap to be able to quit my job and see, you know, there are resources, there are people, there are other women who are doing these things. And some of these, you know, women specifically were people who maybe I worked like while bartending, maybe I worked or I met while in university. And so women that I had known throughout my past and had worked in places like Canada Basketball or Nike or things like that. And it wasn't until, you know, I had this like physical product or thing that they could help me with that they were like, you know what, like we know you, Olivia, as a person. On paper, you know, you might have just started, but we know that like we could trust you, so let me get you in to do this, you know, Nike gifting campaign, or let me get you to come and do a Canada Basketball thing with our team, or things like that. So it was a matter of just like, you know, people that I had known throughout my life in these spaces already, and just naturally, obviously, like working in sport and being around basketball, I was intertwined with these people. But it was an opportunity where, you know, they now worked for these brands or bigger brands that I was like, okay, like I have something to offer, you know, it's a reciprocal relationship. Like, why wouldn't we put each other on? And so it really just started off as that, and it just kept spiraling. And so like all these new partnerships and these things. And as I mentioned earlier, like, I think the funniest thing is that like, yeah, like I'm working with, you know, all these big teams and all these names and things like that. But it's just like at the end of the day, the people who work for the teams are just like you and me, or like, you know.
So Olivia, we only have 2 more questions. We could continue talking for hours because your story is so interesting and exciting, but wanted to hear a little bit about some exciting projects that you have on the horizon. What can we be on the lookout for this next coming year?
Yeah, so we currently have our NBA license and WNBA license in Canada. And so, with the launch of our most recent kind of campaign with the WNBA Goods, which is in honor of the WNBA game that's going to happen actually next weekend in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, we released our like new WNBA pillows, and there was a ton of online traction for the product to be available in the US. And so we've been working with the NBA US like licensing team to figure out, you know, how do we amend the contract and work on things like that. So the goal is, yeah, eventually selling products in the US and expanding that license, and also in Mexico as well. But right now we have the ability to work with all the individual teams, whether we want to do workshops with them, whether we want to sell our products in their retail stores. And so the plan is to kind of take, you know, all the things that we've done with the Raptors, which is, you know, we sell our products at our home games. We have partnerships with them where we'll execute workshops for youth. We'll work with their like ERG groups and work with a lot of the social and community impact teams to execute workshops for different communities through the Raptors organization. And if I could kind of copy and paste that to every single, I mean, NBA, WNBA team, that would obviously be the goal. And so I think, you know, I'm kind of at this like next cusp of like, you know, I've curated these relationships with a few more NBA teams. I've curated some events in the US. And so the plan in the next like couple of years is to, yeah, expand in the US as much as I can, expand in Mexico, try to tackle North America and burst outside of the Toronto bubble. And so using, you know, all the partnerships that I've had and the relationships that I have with these brands in Canada, and then tapping into their kind of global teams and looking at how we can be of kind of service to each other. That's kind of the plan for the next year or so.
Ooh, that's exciting. You're like casual. You said it so nonchalant, laissez-faire.
Just conquering North America.
Let's go. Yeah. And then the world. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Let's go, Pinky. Pinky and the brain,
exactly.
brain.
Yeah, right?
Well, before we hop into lightning round, which is the fun part, really, really fun part of the show, we always ask our guests, what words of advice do you have for listeners in terms of following their dreams and passions and using their giftings to make the world a better place?
Yeah, I think the one thing I always want to share, and I always tell, you know, in my workshops and everyone is this idea of lifting as you climb. And so, if you're getting opportunities, if you're getting into places and rooms, who are you also lifting as you get there? Who are you empowering? Who are you being an advocate for? And I think that the more we all move with this bigger purpose to serve, our communities and our people or whatever that looks like, it only becomes this like ripple effect that, everyone eventually is looking out for each other. And so that's kind of my word of advice is just, yeah, lift as you climb. I try to be really intentional, as I get into rooms or if I see opportunities that fit someone else that's maybe not me, I try to give them that alley-oop and really try to see how I could help grow, I guess, the next person. And so, yeah.
That's a great word. I love that. It's, very on brand for you too. And you really do embody that mission of giving and growing along the way. Cool. So that takes us to our last segment of the podcast, which is what we term our lightning round. Essentially, during the lightning round, Chelsea likes to make some sound effects.
We don't have sound
during
effects
this chat.
yet, so I'm like,
You are the machine,
pew,
yeah.
pew, pew, pew. So basically, the gist is you have 30 seconds to answer each question, and let's kick it off. So, what has been your favorite place that you visited on tour these last couple months?
I was in San Pancho, Mexico, helping out Buckets and Borders paint some basketball courts and renovated a local basketball court in a little surf town in Mexico. And so was able to do a workshop with some of their community women. And so it was a little bit of like the older women, like the moms and the aunties and things like that. So it was really cool to tap into that community. And, usually those are the caregivers. So it was like an opportunity to give back to them in some sort of way.
All right, second question. What is your favorite house plant, or whether to use it in your house or to bring to the workshops?
I always like to use snake plants because of the fact that you actually can't kill them. They're very hard to kill. And so I've had someone try to return a plant to me that they killed, and they were like, I followed your instructions and the plant died. So I was like, okay, I'm going forward. We're only going to choose plants that are easy
Only
to take care of,
succulents.
hard to kill.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I've
So
killed a
I would say
succulent.
I would say, yeah, the snake plants. The snake plants are can thrive in any condition. I like to call them like the Mamba snake plant because they're kind of indestructible, and so and hard to kill. So that's
what
my
I
favorite
need.
one.
I'm not great with plants, I'll be honest. I just killed.
Get one, and
my husband is the one who kind of takes care of like the cute trees and stuff. And I have one plant that I'm like, okay, this is mine, and he's struggling. My tiger plant.
It's okay.
So.
It's okay. Yeah, you gotta get a snake plant. You gotta start strong.
100%. Okay, so Olivia, are you a trash talker on the court?
I used to be when I was younger. I used to be because I was always the smallest one on the court. I was always the most underestimated. So I would talk a lot of shit on the court. Not so much anymore.
Yeah, you definitely didn't talk much
I'm the
crap.
opposite now. I'm the opposite now. Yeah, I'm opposite. I'm like, good job.
Yeah,
empowering everyone. I'm the motivational speaker. I can't back up my play anymore. Back in the day, though.
You have a reputation, a name to uphold.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Sorry, side note. I got asked to be on like Amazing Race Canada once, like last year or something. But I was like, I can't go on. I'm like, I can't, people can't see this like competitive side of me where I'm like, my brand, the Give and Grow, I want to empower girls. And then I'm on this show, like cussing at my partner, being like, move faster. Like, so I'm like,
move your ass.
We want that. That's what we want. Please get on that show.
I'm like, I'm too competitive.
I'm here
to
for
see
it.
Those true colors. Yeah.
It would be such a mix up. They'd be like, this is Olivia with Give and Grow. And it'd be such a positive commercial of you. And then it flips to this angry little Incredibles baby. Like,
I'm just competitive. Yeah. I'm just competitive.
Yes. Oh, all right. Our last question. What piece of advice would you give your 16-year-old self looking back on where you're at today?
16-year-old self, I would say, yeah, you're exactly where you need to be. You're going to find your love and passion through basketball. And, maybe like as small as you are, your heart will speak volumes. And so continue to follow that, and it'll bring you in rooms and help you knock down doors for yeah, the next generation of girls just like you. So keep going.
That's beautiful.
That's amazing.
I love it. So good. Well, Olivia, thank you so much again. This has been an incredible conversation. I feel super, super encouraged and fired up. I know our listeners will feel the same. And listeners, there are ways to stay in touch with Olivia. We will link all of her socials in the show notes, links to her website where you can purchase the Give and Grow plants and products as well. And Olivia will definitely keep you in the loop. So give her a follow as well, so you can be abreast as to all the cool things she has going down. But thank you so much again. It was an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you both. Appreciate you.